Welcome to 032 Conversations, the podcast where we talk to creatives, see how they live, and how they do their work. I am your host, Carlo Villarica. If you've clicked on this podcast, you probably already know what this is about. I know the title of this podcast is probably going to be something like it had a good run, this had a good run, this is the end, something like that, or I've decided to stop the podcast. So I'm going to get straight to it. I've decided to stop the podcast for 2021. 3 years was a good run. I started it in February 2018, and when I started it, it seemed like a really good idea for me, especially where I was at that point in time. Because honestly, I've gotten so much from the podcast. Like, so much. Like, a friend of mine asked me a few weeks ago what I got out of it, and I didn't really think about it that much, and then I couldn't really come up with anything tangible, but I realized that I got so much from it. I mean, some of the obvious stuff is, of course, the podcast over the years has gotten a few sponsors, and I'm thankful for that, specifically for Cube Gallery and Bix Recovery Supplement. They sponsored the podcast for a while, for a long time. So there were some monetary benefits as well as like product benefits for me. So I got that. But also, yeah, seriously guys, thanks so much. But also, the podcast was a great way for me to learn from other people. Interact with other people. It was a great excuse to pick the brains of like really smart people and share a little bit of myself along the way, right? So a lot of the benefits that I got from the podcast, I don't think I was doing it on purpose. I wasn't thinking about it as it was happening, but I was able to see the possibilities and what needs to be done to be a creative in Cebu or be a creative in the Philippines. You know, what needs to happen to make it as a living, to do it for a living, to be a creative for a living. You know, specifically if you aren't like in advertising, although I did interview a few people in advertising as well. And also the podcast, when I started it, it was a time when I felt like I wasn't giving myself enough, like social interaction. So back then, I would say like, let's say 2017, I was relying a lot, like not doing it on purpose, not consciously, but unconsciously, I was relying a lot on my wife in a sense, on her extrovertness, on her wanting to have dinner with friends, on her wanting to hang out with other people. Because, like I have a wife, I have 2 kids. It's very easy for me to hunker down, stay at home, just take care of the kids, do the work, and not have to see other people. And I know that there's a huge benefit of that social interaction with people outside of your circle. And I think now more than ever, like right now I'm reading this in December 2020. Now more than ever, I think a lot of people have realized how important this is, how important it is to just hang out with your friends or to see other people outside of social media, And I was able to get that through the podcast. And because I knew back then, I had to do something to get myself out of that rut. And this podcast was really important for that. So I got some social interaction from it. And I also really got to learn, like legitimately learn and be inspired by other people that I met through the podcast. Now, I'll give you a very concrete example for me. So one of the people I met through the podcast was Christian Lim. When I started cycling, I saw his name come up a lot on Strava. I eventually followed him on social media, and I thought it would be a good idea to interview him on the podcast. So I met him on the podcast. The first time I interviewed him was the first time I met him in the flesh. And we talked a lot about sports, about training. And after the interview, we kept in touch on social media. But also after the interview, I saw that he started a YouTube channel. And then he was doing pretty well. He was doing well at it. And this was way before I thought of starting a YouTube channel of my own. But there's something that happens when you see people or when you see people that you've connected with, and they do stuff that you feel like you probably would never be able to do. Because I never thought I would be shooting video. I never thought I would be talking to a camera. Really, it still does. It feels really weird. So for context, I have a cycling YouTube show called No Boring Days, and I'll talk about that more later on. But I've started a YouTube show, started vlogging, and a big inspiration for that, in a sense of like just knowing it's possible, is Christian Lim. Like, he got to do it. You see that it's possible. I'm like, hey, I can give that a shot. So that's like a direct result of the podcast helping me in what I'm doing. And then there's so many other instances where I'm sure I learned from other people and applied it to my life. But this example with Christian Lim is the one that's very specific right now, and something that I can give out as a very concrete example. And ironically, the podcast was also good practice for the vlog. Talking to you right now, the listener, it might not seem that weird from your perspective, but from my perspective, I am literally facing a wall, looking at the wires behind my computer, and reading some notes just so I don't get lost in the stuff that I have to say. But it feels weird to talk to a microphone staring at a wall. It really does. So it did help with the vlog too. But one other thing that I discovered with the podcast, at least rediscovered with the podcast, and this came about during the pandemic as well, was I started reconnecting with a lot of my friends, and we were having regular Zoom calls because none of them are from Cebu anyway. So we started reconnecting using Zoom calls, and then a lot of them were in the podcast. And it's one of the things that I enjoyed the most from this podcast. I think, let's say 5-10 years from now, I suspect I will be listening to some of those recordings again, because it's so rare now for me to just hang out with my friends because they're just not here. And I don't know, those things are pretty precious for me right now, and really legitimately brings me a lot of joy. And I hope even without the podcast, we're going to continue to have regular calls. We might even still stream it and might even still release it as a podcast, but there probably won't be regular intervals. There probably won't be some sort of content calendar. My other friend suggested that I could actually do that. Just have the podcast and not commit to a schedule. But we'll see. I mean, we'll probably have regular conversations with my friends, but it won't be under the 032 Conversations banner. So probably still stream it. I'll figure out like an avenue for it if we decide to do it. So you might be asking, why stop the podcast? Why stop doing it if I got so much out of it, and if I continue to get so much out of it? The truth is, I'm just having difficulty finding motivation to continue to do it. It's not that I don't want to do it, but I only have so much time during the day to devote to making content. Like, so, time is not infinite. At least your time, my time is not infinite. Having a wife and 2 kids, it is great. It's the best thing of my life. But also, it means that I have to devote a lot of time to them, and rightfully so. So, like, my example was going to be music. So, music was definitely my first love. I spent so much time in music because, all my friends, we had a band together. We had a band called Rescue a Hero. And I spent a lot of time making music, recording music, playing music. And when everybody left, I found myself without the motivation to, number one, find other friends to play music with. But also, I got interested in other things. And just like now, I was in a crossroads where I had to choose what to focus on. So I decided to let go of what I was doing in music and focus on other things. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just don't have time to do everything. Right? And for the time that I was spending doing the podcast, even though I did get a lot out of it, monetarily, it was not a huge return. I got some income from it, but it wasn't much. I mean, it was okay, but it's not. So I'm still on my quest of finding this thing that I love doing that at the same time it can become a main source of income. So for some context again, a lot of my regular income comes from freelance social media work. So it pays the bills, it's great, but it doesn't fulfill the soul. But the great thing is it gives me time to try other things, right? So I can still have a regular income. I'm not super bogged down by it that I can't do anything else. But it still allows it still allows me to try other things. And one of the things that I really want to do is I want to find a way to have my desire to create content, doing things that I love, and trying to find ways to make that a significant chunk of my income. So when 2020 started, I decided when lockdown happened, I found myself with a lot of free time. And I tried, just making YouTube videos, started vlogging. And surprisingly, it seems like people are into it. It's a cycling vlog called No Boring Days. It's Carlo Villarica, No Boring Days. And it seems like the most likely avenue right now that can be a way for me to make a real income through, the content creation of doing something that I love and making it a main source of income. And, that's a nice thing with cycling. You can do it well into your old age, and it's in fact going to make my life, my quality of life much better. I'm just going to be a healthier human being if I continue to keep cycling. And from my perspective, I'm just documenting, the stuff that I'm already doing. And, and it's fun. And it seems like people are into it. I think I started April 2020, posted a video. And then I believe October 2020, I could be wrong about the exact dates, but I got monetized. So meaning in YouTube, if you have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours, you can be monetized. And, there's ads on your videos and you get a little income from it. But right now I'm getting about almost $2 a day and the income seems to be growing. So I want to see how far I can push this whole YouTube thing. And that means I'd like to give it a real shot. which also means I need to devote time to it. And I'd like to find a way to make it a main source of income. And the nice thing is, with 032 Conversations, I have learned a lot. Like a lot. But it never reached a tipping point where through the content creation I was making, I would get some income from it, but enough to pay for little expenses here and there, but nothing really substantial where I could say that it was my main source of income. Right? I mean, apart from the freelance stuff, technically the freelance stuff is under 032, but it's me working for other people. It's not me gaining an income through content creation somehow, whether it be through advertising or merchandise sales or, that sort of thing. So, considering what is happening with my YouTube channel right now, I think I want to see what will happen if I devote more time to it, right? I'm not stopping my day job. I'll still continue to do my freelance work, but 032 and 032 Conversations definitely took a chunk of my time. And I decided, I'm going to put that time to the YouTube channel. And we'll see what happens. Like right now, it has an income. It's not much, but it pays for bicycle expenses right now. Fortunately, fortunately having a bike is not that expensive if you just don't keep buying new stuff for your bike. If you just maintain, if you have to buy new tires every now and then, it's really not that expensive. And it means that I gotta put more time to that YouTube channel. So this means probably also the end of 032 as a content outlet for me. I still have to figure out what to do with the website. I'll probably keep it online for a while, maybe a year or so. And then eventually, when the hosting runs out, then it's probably going to disappear. Fortunately, the podcast episodes will still be online. You can find it wherever you find podcasts. And I might announce some sort of stream, I don't know. I don't really know yet. I don't want to close the possibility of having live streams with my friends because they were genuinely fun. I don't know yet where I would put the live streams. But yeah, and then the other thing is my newsletter. I'm not sure. I'll have to figure out how to do the newsletter as well. I'll probably continue the newsletter, to be honest. It's a good way for me to exercise my thinking muscle, but I'll have to kind of rebrand it somehow. I don't know. I'll figure something out. So that's it. And if you're listening to this, especially if you're listening to this far along, man, my throat is getting dry from all the talking. If you are listening to this episode at this point, it probably means you've listened to a whole bunch of other podcast episodes as well. Thank you, man. Thank you for listening. Thank you for, I really have gotten quite a lot of feedback from the podcast, and it seems like the podcast has helped a lot of people. And, I wish I could make this work. I wish I could continue to do this. But, somebody smarter than me will come along and figure out something and have a much better product. All right. I guess that's it. Okay. Bye, everybody. Ciao.